All right, hey guys, what's up? This is Brian, and welcome to Nerdrevolt number 48. Hang on to your butts. I'm joined by my friends, the Honey Badgers. Let me go around and introduce whoever's here. So first we have Hannah Wallen. Say hello, Hannah.
Hello, Hannah.
we have
Probably nobody's old enough to get that.
we have the totally clutch Oliver Campbell.
Yo.
Oliver, yo. And we have Rachel Edwards. Rachel. Rachel.
Hi. Hi,
Okay.
everybody.
We have a lot of Nerd Revolt stuff going on, so I'm going to go ahead and go right into the mailbag, and then we'll get into the topics. So, Jesse O writes, "Hey Badgers, still badgering?" Why, yes, we are. I was wondering what SJWs and Anita would complain about a game. Wait, I want this sentence is a little weird. I was wondering what SJWs and Anita would complain about a game where the plot is a white cis scum male protagonist trying to save his mother or both his parents, so a male damsel is there. Perhaps a game where the mother and father are trying to save their children. I think this game would sell, but what do you guys think? Okay.
Well, I think that you pretend like that game doesn't exist. Like a lot of other games that have a situation where you have to save a male protagonist or friend or something like that.
Yeah, or they'd find something to complain about it. Like they're not doing it right.
Yeah.
They'd come up with some way in which it is they can use toxic masculinity as a label
Yeah.
for it, or
It's still a male power fantasy sort of thing.
yeah they
How
would
dare
find
they.
a way to insert feminist theory into it. They'd
There,
rape
there
the
are
shit out of that game.
Yeah, there basically are two answers to this question. One is if we were trying to make this game for gamers, none of this shit would matter. The only thing that would matter is the game fun, and if it is, then yeah, we'll buy it. When it comes to Anita, then this also doesn't matter because Anita herself already said everything is racist, everything is sexist, and you have to point it out. So it's either you win or you don't, depending on who you're trying to sell it to.
Not to mention, she does have a habit of attributing characteristics to games falsely and ignoring characteristics that do exist in those games in order to make her arguments.
Yes. Absolutely.
Now, I'm still trying to understand the question. Could you?
Yeah, I'll try.
Repeat that
Okay,
again?
so the game has a plot where a white cis scum male protagonist, or propagandist, I'm sorry, is trying to save his mother or his parents, or both of his parents, so that one of the people he's trying to save is a male damsel. Or perhaps a game where the mother and father are trying to save their children, so a game where there are parents trying to save their children.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That game already exists. It's called Heavy Rain.
yeah,
Exactly what it's about, and they don't care. Like that's the whole point. I mean, since God, I can't even get my mind together thinking about this because the very idea of it makes my brain hurt. But I'm sitting here thinking, I'm thinking back to whatever speech she was giving, talking about how she's an expert on the depictions of what. First off, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, who actually bestowed upon you that authority to have any kind of say in how, or who's bestowed upon you that alleged expertise and gave you that title on being able to understand how a story works. Two, I actually write stories for a living, so I think I'm a little bit more qualified to speak on those subjects than she is. And then three, I just started a new gig at The Escapist where my column is going to focus purely on how stories work and how they function. So just the very idea that, we look at these people trying to think that they know how a story works when they don't know how it works at all is just flabbergasting to me. The reason I kind of divulged into that is because that is actually going to be one of my columns, this exact topic of what the person asked, talking about dealing with parents and children in storytelling and the relationships of fathers and their children and how we're actually getting a lot more stories pushed towards that direction so that people can kind of learn and understand how we look at things, because it's a topic that's oftentimes missed. You've got Heavy Rain, you've got The Last of Us that
Yep.
deals exclusively with a father having to deal with losing his kid and coming to terms with that. He's grieving for over 2 decades over that, you know?
So the
And
first Silent Hill game.
yeah, there you go. Especially the first Silent Hill. You know, he's going to get his kid. Like, that's all that he cares about. You know, he's going to rescue his daughter, not because she's a woman, but because that's his family. You know? And these people just miss that point. They don't care about the individual. They care about, strangely, themselves in the, no, individuality doesn't matter unless it's me. And then two, everyone has to conform to their world standard. The world doesn't work that way.
No. All right, so the next letter. S. Fisher has made an inquiry. Hi, Badgers. I recently discovered your show, and I have been binge listening to all of your recent podcasts while I do other things like play video games, etc. I must say it's a great listen. Well, thank you. Well, today, I was over at my grandma's house. This sounds like it's going to be a long story. To help her with housework and gardening, as I'm young and able-bodied. Ooh, shame on you. Well, at one point, I sat down on her couch for a break and pulled out my laptop and opened up your most recent show, Shit Feminists Say. I got about an hour in and my laptop crashed, but I also had to use the bathroom, so I closed it and I figured I'd reset it when I was done. I came back to find that even though my laptop was closed and supposedly crashed, the podcast kept playing, and I had taken my headphones with me to the bathroom to watch something on my phone, so about 10 minutes of your show was playing from my laptop speakers, and to my slight shock, my grandma was sitting there listening to it. She asked a bunch of questions as to what she had just listened to, and I had to explain to her that there wasn't any nudity or anything sexual on YouTube, and what YouTube was, and that I don't go around repeating swear words all over the place, and that you guys were basically a radio show. She's an avid coast-to-coast listener, and other things like that. Now, I think she doesn't see me in the same light anymore because I was listening to a podcast about feminism. Either that or she just forgot about it. Anyway, I love your show. Have a lovely evening, Badgers. Wow. Okay. Well, I hope that your relationship with your grandmother is still okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what to add. I mean, it's like, well, you know what?
What can we say?
I will say this. S. Fisher, having to explain YouTube to your grandma is probably not as awkward as trying to explain furries to Christina Hoff Sommers. So, at the very least, you have that going for you.
Yeah, I have a hard time explaining what I do even to my mother. I mean, I remember trying to explain to her what I was doing, and explaining that I talk about things that are controversial, and then she looked at me straight in the face. She's like, "You didn't join ISIS or something, did you?" Like, what the
Right. Of course you did. You did better than that. You joined Acid Rain.
And I'm like, Mother, I'm not even. No. Why would I join?
Join Acid Rain, Rachel.
Why would I join Islam?
Shame on SVU.
If I was-
I don't talk to my parents about this. I hate to sound like an asshole, but I think it's over their heads.
I talk to my parents about it to an extent. My family's always been very politically active, and so there's the political discussion is inevitable at my house. No matter what we're talking about, at some point or another, it's going to just sort of morph into politics anyway. But we don't always agree on everything. So sometimes the discussions get a little heated. Never angry, just a little heated. And a lot of times I have to go through and explain the background and causes behind some of the issues that we discuss and everything, because their experiences are, of course, just like everybody's, their experiences are limited to their own sphere of existence. And there are myths that my family has sort of been disabused of, specifically because I'm involved in this.
Oliver, do you have anything you want to share regarding your family and stuff? You guys get along, talk about this kind of thing?
Uh, I hate to say it, but a lot of my family, they don't understand hardly anything that I do. They just, most of them are not the type of people to get into real high-end stuff like this. So it's actually always just been weird for me to have any kind of higher intellectual conversation with them in regards to these things. Like it's just always been weird. Like I can sit down and say, "Oh yeah," like just give you an off-the-cuff example. I could say, "Yeah, I was down in Miami at a journalism conference trying to, point out why media is doing really really bad right now," and they'd be like, "Oh, that's nice." And
Yeah.
it doesn't ever click through with them. So I just don't ever get into those conversations with my family because it's just wasted.
No, you and me the same. That's exactly the same thing. I mean, I'm like the first. I'm the first person in my family that's going to graduate college. So, yeah, and I'm also first generation here in the States from Puerto Rico. Um, they're great people. They're also very simple people. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the topics. Rachel, do you have a thing? Do you have a thing?
Yes, I have things. I was unfortunately unable to upload all of my things into the thing, but I have them here right now, so I can read them to you. So yes, the
Do it.
things. So
Give
many
us
things.
the thing.
So I guess we'll just kind of. Do you want to dive into the main topic, or do you want to talk about just other things first?
No, let us slip into the crack of the main topic.
Is your body ready?
That was nasty.
No, it should never be ready. That's the point.
Exactly.
the
That's the
next gonna be
spirit.
We're all on crack now.
That's the spirit. That's the spirit.
We're in crack.
Do you want to play the rape game, Brian?
No.
That's the spirit.
No.
There we go. Anyway, Sarah Nyberg may face legal action. Sarah Nyberg, aka SRH Butts, may be facing legal action following an investigative article soon to be dropped by Milo Yiannopoulos. Chat logs from Nyberg's old stomping grounds that meant they're supposed to be grounds, reveal her to not only be an admitted pedophile, but one with the intent to victimize children. The allegations put forth by Milo Yiannopoulos are summarized as follows. 1. Describing herself as a pedophile. 2. Taking pornographic pictures of her 8-year-old niece in various stages of undress. 3. Providing personal information about her niece in question. 4. Downloading, uploading, encrypting, and storing child pornography. 5. Defending sex with minors. And 6. Owing more than $100,000 in back taxes. The parents of the child in question have been notified and have expressed a desire to contact the authorities once the story goes live. So, who wants to be the first to touch this topic inappropriately?
Sorry, are we touching the poop now?
Yeah, well,
Kind of a consequence of going into the crack.
but no, in all seriousness, this is absolutely fucking terrible. And I hope this gets taken care of. I really do, because it's not okay to put a child into a situation where they are being exploited in this way, and that's because it's not made clear how far the pictures go, but I think it's probably just noted, but even so, you're exploiting a child for.
I was gonna say, here's the thing: under the child pornography laws, from what I'm given to understand, children are protected even if they're not.
Yes.
Even if they're not forced into a state of undress, if they're being exploited for
Absolutely.
just sexualized poses. I hate to use the word sexualized because it's a term feminists misapply frequently, but if it appears that the individual who took the pictures put the child into sexual situations or situations that infer sexual intent,
Yeah.
and actually made the child uncomfortable or made the child experience fear or anything like that, or is simply marketing the images
Yeah.
to pedophiles.
And,
There's coverage for that. And this is all secondhand knowledge for me, almost third hand, because I have a friend who actually digs to find, stuff to report to the authorities,
mm,
and this is also old stuff because this is somebody that I've been out of contact with for a few years.
yeah.
But basically, I guess you could call him an internet vigilante because of his own experiences, and so yeah, even if you want to describe, or if Sarah wants to describe the images as innocuous after stating intent on the internet, it's she's not going to be protected if she's done this. If there's evidence besides the chat logs, if they get a hold of actual pictures, if they can find things on her computer that indicate that she's guilty of this, she's pretty much screwed. Just describing yourself as a pedophile doesn't necessarily get you in trouble.
Yeah, it's
But
all
acting
about
on it
intent.
does.
And also expressing intent, which is something that is continuously mentioned in the chat logs. At one point, it's joked about that she said that she wanted to actually adopt a child to engage in this kind of yeah.
Well, and
So,
to be honest, I would liken um, realizing that you have a proclivity like that to realizing that you're infected with lycanthropy. And this is you now realize that you have something within yourself that makes you a danger to other people. The most moral and ethical course of action would be to seek help for it, not find ways to engage in it without getting caught.
Um, I'm of another mind on this. There's a couple things. I agree with Hannah. So where she says my main thing is that I don't think we should not be doing the same things that social justice warriors do, where they do trial by social media, where they basically condemn people based on what, even if some of it's confirmed, or even if she's admitted to things. I think that we still have to do things through the proper channels, the right way, if anything's going to be done at all. My question would be, what would be the, what can Sarah Butts be considered guilty of? Where does this actually conceivably lead to that isn't surrounded in hearsay? Secondly, I know that there are people who are saying this in the chat, and I thought it myself when this came up as a story. This doesn't really have anything to do with ethics and game journalism. It's really it's only tangentially related because there is a person who is one of the loudest voices against, Gamergate, and we're basically like getting this information, which I understand how this sort of thing happens, but it's very important that we remain vigilant and we don't become like those people. And there is a way to do that that is constructive. Ultimately, I'm not interested in tearing down a troll on the other side. However, if she's doing something unlawful or and damaging to other people, and there is a way to convict and prove it, and we can all help in that, then I agree. But I don't think it has anything to do with ethics and game journalism.
It doesn't. What it does have to do with is this is yet another example of an individual who is a sort of a spokesperson against Gamergate that has turned out to have terrible things either in their background or in their displayed character.
Yes,
Well,
but I would still. I'm sorry, Oliver. I'm gonna let you talk.
No, go ahead.
I would still say that you're right, and that's absolutely true. But I would also just, for myself, I would still consider her to be an individual and not representative of that group. because that's
Right.
what they do to
It's
us.
just,
So
it's
it's
just
just,
that all of the loudest individuals
of
in that
course,
group
if
advocate terrible
yeah,
things.
of course, if an individual on our side does something crazy or like gets out of line, or even if they don't, we usually hold them accountable. So I mean, there is that is also a difference as well.
Well,
So,
also, one of the things that's going on here that we need to think about is that the reaction to several of these allegations early on were not even acknowledged. It just wasn't acknowledged at all. Like, there wasn't any question in their minds of whether or not this person was innocent. They were absolutely, oh, this person's innocent. This is just a harassment campaign. That's a serious allegation that you should, look into and not just be so automatically dismissive of it. I think that the willingness to be so dismissive of something like that kind of shows what's going on over there on the anti-side. I think it's kind of, I don't know, it just shows how irresponsible they are.
yeah, it's a little
Just
hypocritical.
overall.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of hypocrisy in that too, because that same side is the group, well, is part of the group that is the first to judge if somebody starts accusing any given psychopath that makes the news or any sociopath that makes the news for doing something terrible, of being a men's rights activist or a gamergator.
All right, Oliver, go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
No, it was just you guys, like, parts of what you're saying is pretty much how I feel about it. Like, I've stayed the hell out of it. But when you look at this, again, people are saying, what does it have to do with ethics and journalism? It has nothing to do with ethics and journalism, but what it does have to do with Gamergate, and that's that's a very important thing to look at, is that this person now stands accused of the exact same thing that they were accusing everyone else of. That's the thing that people should be looking at, because I certainly recall some months back when they had this insane hard-on for 8chan, and they're like, oh, they're doing this, but it's like, no, wait a minute. Over on your own site, there is enough evidence to raise a reasonable suspicion of this activity, and that's the key here. Because I've been watching people going back and forth on this one, and I'm not going to sit there and do just like Brian said, where people are trying to judge people or having a trial in public, and that's not the case here. Last I checked, I certainly wasn't a member of the law enforcement, and I'm sure not a part of the judicial system. Now, if you think a crime has been committed, your responsibility is to report that to the authorities, present them with what you have, and then you let them handle it, because that's their job. You pay them to do that job, to get people like that off the streets and get whatever help that they need. But my biggest disappointment would be probably people sitting around and gloating about it, or just running around and not doing anything about it. I mean, that's the same thing our opposition does. They talk a whole bunch of talk, but they never get any damn thing done. They sit and they scream and they bitch and they moan, but nothing ever comes of it. I want to see people take actions. I want to see people go, oh, hey, this is actually really messed up. Let's gather up what we can and go take that to the people who actually do things about that. And so, just looking at it, I've been saying it for a year. Take actions. Real actions that lead to real results. If you think crimes are happening, then you need to go, point that stuff to the right people. But if not, stop trying to use it to score points. I look at this, I can't stand that person. I can't stand him at all. As much as anyone else does. But if children are being harmed, you are in the wrong if you're sitting around not doing anything about it. If children are being harmed or have been in situations where they were harmed or they could be harmed by an adult who clearly is disturbed, you're not doing your social responsibility to help that person or to help those children. That's just been my take on the situation and looking at that. Now, if that's the case, then do something about it. As far as the opposition goes, it's pretty sad how strongly that they want to defend their ideology so much that they would overlook a very, very serious crime. Like, shame on all of you. If one of you are listening right now, shame on you for that. Like, there's enough to have reasonable suspicion. It's not any kind of confirmation of, oh, this has in fact happened. No, but there's enough stuff here to make everyone stop, take pause, and go, what's going on with this? We need to look at this. Everyone needs to sit down and look at this. I don't care what side you're on. Because as far as I can tell, everyone thinks that that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that's just the stance that I'm at. But if you're going, oh, this is a smear campaign, no. What if it's not? It would be better to go and be able to disprove that thing, and then you can turn around and throw that back in Gamergate's face if you wanted to. You know, I'm just laying down the hypothetical there, but don't just sit there and offhandedly dismiss something. Like, what if somebody sat down and found evidence that one of them was a crazy ass serial killer, right? They got like a whole freezer full of limbs or whatever. Oh, it's just a smear campaign, right? But maybe it's not. And what if, you know, someone is out there killing people left and right and you defended that? Could you go to sleep with that on your conscience? Fuck no, I sure couldn't. Like, no way. Like, it's just, I'm just saying, I'm adding a little bit of perspective onto this. Like, everyone has to look at these things. And it's sad that it comes to this. And it's sad that we can sit back and look at Gamergate's behavior regarding it and anti-gamer. It's just people's behavior. It's not even about sides at this point. It's people's behavior. That's the way I've always been. If I see a thing, I do everything possible to take that out of my hands and move it in the direction of which it should go, which is, well, the right direction. That's all I got to say about that.
Thank you, Oliver. Yeah, I think that I think the most important thing for me, anyway, to take away from this, and I think the reason why I wanted to discuss it on the show was mainly to say that when it comes to these kinds of events, when you see this stuff happen and you see something going on with someone who you are opposed, you know, you're saying you find yourself on the opposite side of the argument with, in this case, with regards to Gamergate and Sarah Butts, it's not really constructive to focus on whatever's going on with individual people and their own problems and what we may or may not know about what they do behind closed doors or whatever. If there's something going on and there's something that someone is being harmed and you want to help and, you know, like, do something about it, remember the kind of charity that Gamergate was capable of with regards to all of the various causes they donated to and what they did for the Fine Young Capitalists and what they did for Cytheria and all these other things. And those things were good causes, good things that helped people that weren't related to trying to tear someone else down or gloat or stand on some kind of topic that gives you the ability to basically pat yourself on the back. That's not, I don't think that's a really constructive thing to do. I think it's all about what, you know, if it's related to GG and you want to do something, great. If it's not, but you just want to do something on moral principle and you want to help out, that's great too. It doesn't have to be related to games journalism. It doesn't have to be related to Gamergate. With regards to this particular issue, I think the most important thing to take away from this is for us to remain, like, this incident involving this person is not related to games journalism. So it's not constructive to use it in the context of that argument. The only thing it might be good for are the things that we mentioned, where you have, you know, it shows like how the opposition behaves, and you want to get a bit of that to show, you know, to give an example. Okay, I can see that. I can see how that can be helpful, but I can't tell. I mean, I'm not one to tell anyone what they should do, but I find it to be just drama, and I don't really think it's very useful for myself. I mean, for all I know, I'm reminded of I don't know Sarah Butts. I know that she has a lot of time on the internet. I know that she's been trolling us. She's actually appeared in our chats a couple of times, and I've actually said to her, if you want to come on the show, come on in, right? I know that she has a lot of time to do this stuff, and I'm reminded, and I don't want to make any assumptions here, but about her, but I'm reminded of the film Lord of the Rings, and in it, Frodo is talking to Gandalf about Gollum, and he says, that he used to, at one time he wanted to see him killed, but upon seeing him, he pitied him, because it was like there was this thing about what you hear about someone based on the hearsay or other actions, and then when you actually meet them, you find that there is something. They're kind of a sad person, and I think that is entirely possible, and I don't know that it's very useful to go after someone like that unless, of course, it is for legal reasons. So basically, not just tearing them down or not just attacking them or putting them on trial without the intention of actually following through with an investigation and whatever legal recourse would normally come out, regardless as to whether or not it's tied to Gamergate or just being anti-social justice or being anti-feminist or whatever, but just because it is to protect children. If that's what it's about, then go for it.
All right, I got to point out a couple of things here. The
Okay.
first one being that nobody has claimed that this has anything to do with ethics in journalism. Nobody has claimed that this has anything to do with that aspect of Gamergate. What I've seen discussed is that, well, actually I've seen a few things on this discussed. First of all, being the abuses that Butts committed against various Gamergaters, because this is an individual who has used every nasty tactic she could. She has doxed people. She has actually lied about people to the media, and this is somebody who's been quoted. Her tweets have been quoted by media. So this isn't just somebody that it's not just a slap fight on the internet. This is actually an individual who has been very prolific in bullying people specifically for engaging in discussion about journalistic ethics. The other thing about this is it demonstrates that the dedication of the group to ethics and to ethical responses when we find things like this, whether it's somebody behaving unethically in their own profession or somebody doing something that could be very damaging and harmful to society in general and is definitely damaging and harmful to their victims. When we discover something like this, Gamergate always goes to the not necessarily the authorities, but to the best method for stopping the behavior. And that's pretty consistent. And it's not so much about, like I said, it's not so much about a slap fight on the internet, so much as pointing out that ethics isn't limited to games journalism, and it's not limited to games in general. It's something that it should be part of your life in general. And
I agree with that.
And as far as as far as striving to not demonize somebody just because they're on the other side, that should not be extended to the point of ignoring something like this either. There comes a point where we don't want to be like the other side can get stretched to we can't do anything because everything can be likened to being like the other side. And we have to be able to look at situations from our own standpoint and our own perspective without being paranoid that we're adopting other people's tactics all the time. The reality is there are certain behaviors that you simply cannot ignore. And one of them is posting a child's private information on the internet. And that's something that you can't, even if the rest of the accusations were to turn out to be false, that's actionable. And it's something that an individual who, like I said, if she was nobody, if she was just some person that said a few things on the other side and was slightly critical of Gamergate, it'd be one thing. That you contact the parents and it's not really worth discussing. But this is an individual who has done this to so many people, and who has harassed people, like actually stalked and harassed people on the Gamergate side of the discussion, and it's been documented and talked about by the people she did it to. That becomes a reason for discussion within the group, because within the group she's a public figure. I would expect that if, for instance, I created a bunch of accounts to stalk and harass Anita Sarkeesian or one of her followers, that would be worthy of discussion too. And I see no problem with discussing this under that type of circumstance, and under the circumstances that Butts herself has created.
That basically sums that up. I mean, people's actions are what put them in circumstances, and that is what has happened. And just as Hannah said, but more importantly than ever, is that people have to remember some of the core tenets that we do use. Like, okay, well, what about the ethical stuff? Right. This is an allegation. It's an accusation. It's a ton of other things, but right now it's not a confirmation. And people need to remember that. You treat the alleged just as that, or the accused as just as that, the accused. But you're going to have to sit down and be the people that they aren't. We have all these things in place for a reason, and we do these things the way that we do. The only way to have the moral high ground is not to devolve into their own tactics. It's by not doing those horrific, messed up things that they do, and I hope that people remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay with, the really well-known saying, great minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, and small minds talk about people. And I try to focus on the ideas. I do agree with Hannah with what she's saying. It's important that we don't allow this that need or desire or goal of remaining, not trying to be like the enemy, but not making that into a restraint in and of itself, because on some level we have to fight them, and we can't do that if we're always worrying about, doing stuff too much like them. So, but I mean, if at all possible, I try to keep the conversation, elevated to that degree for myself, anyway.
Well, one of the things that we need to remember in all this is that while you have Sarah Butts, and she's doxing and harassing and stalking people and everything like that. This is somebody who a lot of folks, in journalism, a lot of folks on the anti-side, like prominent members on the anti-side, were just listening to. They just listened and believed without any questions. And I think that if it shows anything, it shows their inability to sort of check their sources and to really, take that seriously. Because if this person is being quoted, it's they're not really doing their homework at all.
The last thing I wanted to say before I give the floor, if Hannah wants to say the thing that she wrote, is that one way that I think it would be related to games journalism is that since Gamergate started, the gaming media that has been opposed to Gamergate, or at least opposed to the stuff that Gamergate is representative of, has used every instance, every possible example, anything they could to try to demonize gamers, Gamergate as a whole, men, whatever it was. They've gone after them with whatever they could get their hands on, no matter what, no matter if they had to take it out of context, no matter if they had to, dig really deep, if they were using bad sources, it didn't matter. They were coming after us with everything they had under any circumstances they could find possible, no matter how shady it was. And in the way that I think it's related is with this stuff about SRH Butts and how involved she was with Gamergate, even if she was the opposition, I won't hold my breath to see if the press will actually talk about this topic that we're talking about. And I think in that, like this thing that she's accused of. But if she was pro Gamergate and this news existed, everyone would know about it right now. It would be on every website.
It's true. He's not wrong.
That's true.
It would be fucking everywhere, man. You couldn't get away from it. They'd be trying to lap that one up and milk it for all it was worth. So you do make a great point in the relevance to the overall situation, in that this is just as Rachel said, this is a very serious accusation and does have enough evidence to, raise reasonable suspicion about it. And there's just silence everywhere.
Of course. Okay, go ahead, Hannah.
To be honest, it's probably better for the kid involved if the media doesn't spread this everywhere. But because then the kid has to see it, and there is always the possibility of people getting hold of the information and tracking the kid down to ask questions, and that gets really bad.
Which is unfortunate, though, because if Sarah Butts was pro Gamergate, they would have done that, and that kid would have probably had to deal with that.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's something that's one of the awful things about modern media, is they don't really, it's the last thing that you want to emphasize. That this person out there exists, it's gone through this to an extent that, people become curious and start tracking them down. The thing I wanted to say, and this is something that probably none of our listeners actually have to be told, but it still is something that should be pointed out, is while we do discuss this stuff, and while it's important to go to authorities with things like this, nobody should track down anybody. Nobody should flood Butts with questions or assertions about it. This is one of those things that you let the authorities handle. The information's out, and it's being dealt with, and that's it. There's no point in, at this point, it's a dead horse, and then there's no point in beating a dead horse. It's taken care of as far as at least as far as our part in it. Everything that we can do has been done, and that's it.
There's not much we can do at this point anyway, because she's already gone back into, I think this was actually, that chat was on her website, and she's actually gone so far as to have the chat logs DMCA'd so that they were removed manually.
Well, even if none of that were true, the thing is, at this point, having already done all of the things that we can do to address the situation, going directly after Butts ourselves would be no better. That would be no better than the other side. That would just be harassment. Even if it were to come out that there were absolute 100 concrete proof of all of the allegations and the authorities did nothing, just going after engaging in vigilante shit, even just internet speech vigilante shit. That's never been our style, and it's just nobody should do it.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
All right, Rachel. Let's move on to the next story. What do you got?
Yeah, it's on to some stuff with more merit.
Yeah.
Jeez. Anyway. So that about that story from last week. About that story last week. Anyway, fallacious Gamergate story retracted. The article written by WSBTV Atlanta linking Gamergate to Vester Flanagan has been retracted. After analysis by a scientist at Georgia Tech, it was confirmed that the Steam account that was believed to have belonged to the gunman was not old enough to match with the claims in the story, that someone had played video games with the gunman for 3 years. After analyzing other pieces of evidence, they concluded that the story was a falsehood and retracted their statements. So, yay.
So it takes scientists to figure out when a troll is going on now. This is
Well,
this is our college dollars at work.
I know, right? I mean,
Hey,
let's
at
let's
least
have a scientist.
at least kudos to them for acting on it and retracting the story. That is, if I understand correctly, a first for Gamergate, and I don't think it's ever happened with respect to that same type of lie about men's rights activists.
Nope, it has never happened. What was the thing that the shooting that happened that Anita Sarkeesian immediately went online and said this is proof of toxic masculinity?
Toxic masculinity. That was in Washington State. That was a shooting, and that was actually a shooting that had various elements that may have contributed to the young man's experiences. That at the time, from the information that was out, it was pretty obvious that even if toxic masculinity, as feminists describe it, was a thing, and even if it could be attributable to part of the reason for his outburst, for what he did, it wasn't solely attributable. Even at that point, that much information was out. The kids he shot were still alive at the point that she came out with her statement. And she not only didn't go back on it, she threw a temper tantrum about being criticized for it.
Huh. Does anyone else have any comments about this story before we move on to the next one? I mean, I'm glad that they retracted it too, and it is a first for Gamergate, and it does show that we're making we're making strides. Oliver?
Yes. It is a big deal for a couple of different reasons. Just coming at this from a professional standpoint, it's simultaneously great and bad. The fact is, we shouldn't have ever been in a position where a retraction needed to be made in the first place, because if people had been doing their fucking jobs, that story wouldn't have even made it to the cutting room floor. And that's just the bald-faced truth of it right there.
Uh-huh.
It's sad that people have taken this tragedy and just doing what they always do, trying to turn into political gain, scoring points off of each other and all that. People have completely forgotten about the fact that two people, were shot and killed for basically nothing. There's someone's family out there is now deprived of a family member. That's someone that they won't get back. And people are spending that trying to score points off of that. I mean, that's just messed up no matter how you shake it. You just take it back down to the human level, and somebody didn't go home. Two people didn't go home that day. And whoever those people were, whoever their families were, I can't even imagine what they're still going through. And then someone is trying to conflate completely unrelated shit, to that. So I look at this, and I can't believe how far journalism has fallen, where such a ridiculous claim was taken at face value. That's what blows my mind. Just like that, Like, no one sat down, they went and dug, looked it up, reverse research, checked with people before they ran it. No, they're just like, oh, this sounds like it fits. And then they just went ahead and ran with it. And that's just an incredible shame. Like, that whole station should be ashamed of their actions. Like, if I had been the lead editor there, yeah, heads would have been rolling across the floor for that blunder. The first one to roll would be mine, because it would be my job to make sure that you don't end up doing stupid crap like that. So the responsibility ultimately lays on the editor that lets that story go out. The second thing that just irritates the hell out of me is that this is the boogeyman that has been created by a bunch of emotional, reactionary, grown-ass children on the internet, because they can't handle the fact that they have to be held accountable for their actions like every other damn adult. And so they created this incredible boogeyman out of nothing, and it is now being used as a scapegoat for all the world's ills. And every single person, involved in that and who help contribute to that. I genuinely hope that they're going to have a long life where they're going to have to look at the actions that they have done and how much evil they have brought into the world and that they contributed to simply because they wanted to act like a selfish little rotten asshole. It's messed up no matter how you slice it. No matter how you slice it.
It is. It's incredibly messed up. But I want to point out, this is Gamergate experiencing what men's rights activists, yet again, what men's rights activists have been experiencing for years. And before men's rights activists, gun control, or not gun control advocates, but gun rights advocates, and conservatives, and people of various religions, and that people who are opposed to either their advocacy or basically their right to practice their belief system, or both, have done exactly the same thing in seriousness, and done what the television station did. And we, among men's rights groups, we've seen sociopaths and criminals of various natures associated with us falsely over and over and over again in media on equally flimsy grounds. Hell, at the Men's Rights Conference in 2014, there was a reporter for GQ. His name was Jeff Charlotte. Actually made contact with a admitted pedophile and dragged him around the conference, shoving him in people's faces and trying to get people to in any way accept him so that he could portray the guy as representative of the men's rights movement. And when he didn't get that, he portrayed him as representative anyway, and printed a bunch of twisted lies about the movement and the people in it. And of course, there was the whole man boobs to media not Jeff Charlotte, but man boobs to media Elliot Rodger claim that Elliot Rodger, who was actually an anti-pickup artist, was somehow an MRA, even though he didn't actually have anything to do with the movement, say anything men's rights related, or otherwise have any connection to us at all. And if you go back, every mass shooter, every big male mass shooter has had some aspect of media or feminists or social justice warriors trying to link them to us. And this is the big difference here, is that Gamergate, once again, successfully did something about it. And not only successfully did something about it, they actually got the story retracted. They put the media source that came out with the clearly false and very flimsily thrown together story to retract the story. I don't think that anybody else. I know we haven't. Men's rights activists haven't. And of course, one of the differences is that the primary source a lot of times on crap about us is David Futrell, who I would actually argue has mental health issues himself. But in any case, we've never had anything that at least so far as I know, we've never had anything about us retracted, anything negative about us retracted. And I have never seen anything retracted by anybody who's associated sociopath with gun rights activism or religious activism or any of that. Nobody's ever come out and said, "Oh yeah, this guy wasn't actually a right-wing nut." We were wrong. They just go on when they're proved wrong and find some other slander to publish about the group that they're opposing. So this is actually a pretty big accomplishment in that they have managed to achieve something, and this is just in a year of activism. 1 year of activism, and Gamergate has accomplished something that has other groups have basically never done. Other groups that have been around for years have never done.
In this sense, Hannah is absolutely correct. I think one of the reasons why that is that this is a group that is specifically focused on challenging the media and how they go about doing their jobs, whereas many other groups that get poorly covered or inaccurately covered, extremely so, they don't have a focus on that, so they're not specifically looking at those things and those actions as their core binding philosophy. Maybe I guess that would be a good turn of phrase for that, and you take that, combine that with the outlet themselves that so far on the surface doesn't look like they have any kind of attachments to, feminism or radical feminism and any of those things, social justice, things like that. They're able to just sit back, look at this, and go, huh, yeah. You know what? This doesn't add up. They're absolutely correct. We brought in someone else to look at this, and boom, it was just so easy for them to make that retraction. But with many of the other outlets that we've been dealing with, heaven forbid, someone points out their inaccuracies, and they just become utterly flippant at the very fact that someone could dare make the accusation that you're terrible at your job, and here's objective reasons why. And so I think that kind of serves to, again, highlight, the legitimacy of Gamergate in that sense, where this is the stuff that they spend their time looking at and studying and going, why is the media doing these things? And this is completely reported wrong. And just, how that goes overall. And I think that the SPJ also is kind of starting to get a huge whiff of understanding of that same kind of mindset that we've all been going through.
Rachel?
I only wanted to clarify the one thing. It wasn't David Futrell who specifically said that Elliot Rodger was an MRA, but it was one of the people who was a massive fan of his, who, of course, going through his blog, conflated PUAs with MRAs, and wrote an article for the Daily Costs, and then that just kind of had this butterfly effect that just sort of shifted throughout the internet. But yeah, his blog is basically responsible to some extent, because it's been spewing out misinformation that people take at face value, which breeds more people spewing misinformation. It's just kind of one big, massive clusterfuck that is a gift that just keeps on giving, only that gift is
Well, that is one thing. He does conflate PUAs with MRAs quite a bit.
That never happened.
But it,
huh?
yeah. But there you go, Rachel. There's an example right there of nobody has to make us retract if we make a mistake, and we're alerted to it, or we know about it, or one of us knows about the other's mistake. It just is. We just do it.
All right, Rachel. What's next?
Brace yourselves.
Now
The Hulk is now Asian.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As a part of Marvel's all-new, all-different initiative, Bruce Banner is being replaced by Hulk. But wait, there's more, because this new series of Hulk comics also plans to throw away everything you liked about the original Hulk, and to turn the campiness up to 11, with a Korean Gary Stu that is a confident boy genius who loves being the Hulk. Just a feel-good story about a kid who feels like, I guess, like a lesser being, even though he's like a massive genius and probably employed as a scientist and stuff like that at the tender age of 19. I mean, there's so much to feel bad about there. There's so much conflict in this story so far. Maybe there's some there I don't know about, but I don't know. I'm just saying. Where's the conflict? Because it's like, I don't know.
You ready? Are you done?
Yeah.
Ready? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm not actually mad about this story, and like I know what Marvel's doing. I know this is just part of a long-standing pattern of them making what appears to be basically pretty shallow changes.
Really bad choices.
I have a question before we continue the discussion further. Is this a part of the Ultimate?
No,
Shoot.
this is the main canon. Essentially, the story is Amadeus Cho, who was a character that existed in the Marvel Universe already, who was basically just like a boy genius, and I think he's basically like arguably the smartest guy in the Marvel Universe, next to or right up there with Mr. Fantastic. They've decided to make him into the Hulk. By the way, the subtitle, you know how Marvel Comics, or all comics, but Marvel Comics specifically is known for having a pre-title before the name of the character. So, for example, it'd be the Mighty Thor, or the Invincible Iron Man, or the Uncanny X-Men. Well, originally the Hulk was called the Incredible Hulk. Well, this particular comic is called the Totally Awesome Hulk.
What?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, dude.
What?
Like they're gonna call it the Totally Clutch Hulk.
Is he gonna hang out with Bill and Ted?
Dude, wait, I'm not finished. He has a faux hawk. The Hulk does.
Yeah.
And, like, so he's totally hip, man. He's like totally clutch, man. He's totally like, yeah, man. So he's the hipster version of the Hulk. I mean, the only thing I'm waiting for is a beard and maybe like a lumberjack shirt. But the thing is that I'm not upset about this, and I wasn't really upset about Lady Thor, or when they made Sam Wilson Captain America, or any of those other choices. But what I am more than anything is kind of just sad and disappointed, and I'll tell you why. I've been following the Marvel Universe I've been reading comic books since I was a little kid. It was it was basically the thing that made me very much interested in doing comics as a job, or for a living. I've been drawing because of my exposure to things like comics. And for as long as I've been reading them, they've always had, these kind of, I'm at the point now where I don't even like using the word, but they have these diverse characters, but they've always been that way. I mean, Jack Kirby made the Black Panther, who was the first black superhero, essentially, or at least the first mainstream one that became really big. And the sad thing about this is that the Marvel Universe already has a plethora of Asian characters. They could have just reached into their backlog of any number of those guys, like Sunfire, like Shang-Chi, like there's Mantis, there's other one, there's Sand, there's a whole bunch of them. They could have just
even Jubilee.
Jubilee, exactly, and given them their own series if they wanted to, or catapult them into the spotlight in some way if they wanted to give them their own line. The problem that inevitably will happen with this idea, which is the same problem that plagues my other examples regarding Female Thor and Black Captain America and so on, is inevitably, because of the nature of these kinds of comics, which are not the kinds of stories that have an end, because they have to keep going and going and going. That's sort of like the nature of this kind of medium. Because of the nature of that, Bruce Banner will have to become the Hulk, or at least that Hulk will be replaced or otherwise put aside, so that they can narrow it down to just focusing on the Banner Hulk, because that's the one that everyone's known. And so as a result of that, not only does the Amadeus Cho Hulk have a limited shelf life as an idea, but even while he's here, he will live in the shadow of an older and more beloved character, because they didn't have the foresight to try to just make a new idea or take one of their existing ideas and just make it into a big mainstream one. I mean, like, can you imagine what the outcry would be? Because I don't know if there was much in the way of outcry surrounding this. I mean, I think for the most part people were just like throwing their hands up like, oh, well, this is what we expect now. This is just kind of like how it's going to be. But could you imagine what it would have been like if we made a new Blade and decided he was going to be fucking, albino Russian or something? I mean, like, do you think that would have just been okay? And if it went, because I would have had a problem with it. I mean, it's because it would have just been a really stupid idea. Ultimately, I just think it would have been stupid. Not bad, not insulting because, I don't like that they're fucking with the canon. Just dumb, because at the end of the day, it's going to have to go back to the way it was because this is the nature of the medium. This is the way it always goes. So this is not upsetting to me like I'm offended or angered. I'm just kind of disappointed. I just think that these guys could do better. And what it seems like is the people who work in this industry, specifically the illustrators and writers, are mediocre people who wish they were doing something bigger that are just stuck doing comics because this is the best they can do. And so instead of doing, taking the passion of the medium that's existed for generations and trying to make something good out of that, they're instead interested in injecting their, I don't know, their grief, their angst, their politics, whatever, into their stories, and it's just really transparent and kind of sad.
You know, this really isn't even good identity politics because what they're basically doing here is they're putting the ethnic group in question. You know, each time they do this, into a position of being asked to identify. I shouldn't even just say ethnic group because they did this with female Thor too, but into a position of being asked to identify with a character that will ultimately be rejected. So they're basically setting them up for a huge letdown. And as I've said before with stuff like this is incredibly condescending. It's like you said, this isn't really something for Hulk fans or superhero fans or comic book fans in general to be upset about on the basis of, you know, this is who the character has always been and now they're doing this with it. But I think that the groups that they're doing this to should be upset for the same reason that I said before. It's another group being shoved into a hand-me-down character when the company or the writers or the artists could have been creative enough to create something new or something different, or bring out something existing that is related to that group already, instead of retrofitting an existing character into another group. What they're basically doing there is saying that if you are a group that can be considered part of a marginalized population, all you deserve is hand-me-downs from the heterosexual white cis male, whatever their latest slur is, if they throw in middle class or middle aged like they used to back in the 90s. The idea that other groups should only get the hand-me-downs of the group that is considered the most, I don't know, widely represented is insulting.
Yeah.
It's not an insult to white people when white characters are portrayed as minorities. It's an insult to the minorities who are treated like they don't deserve their own effort from these people.
And they're ticking all the boxes. Like, they're basically going down the line. They're picking, okay, what haven't we done yet? Okay, we've made Iceman gay. We've made Thor into a woman. We've made Captain America black. Let's make Hulk Asian. Now what? I mean, I'm waiting for the next thing. Like, I'm waiting for what's next. You know, we got the Muslim Captain Marvel. I mean, you know.
This is a huge example of tokenism.
How about this? Why don't we just make Sue Storm trans?
You wait.
Let's just do that. I mean, at this point, I mean, they'll try anything. And but what I wanted to add.
Wait, I don't think Hannah. I'm sorry. I think Hannah's not quite finished.
No, I forgot to mute, and something in chat made me laugh. And What the Hell I'm Bored says, next week, Pygmy Hulk.
Oh gosh. But
okay, no, I would actually pay to see that, because that'd be amazing. Like, I imagine he'd be like 2.5 feet tall. He'd be like, oh, you're an angry little man.
Amazing as Spider-Man, Oliver. That would be totally awesome.
Well, what I wanted to actually, what I wanted to say, the reason why I'm kind of a little upset about this is not that, like, he's Asian or anything like that. It's that the premise sounds really, really fucking boring. The whole thing that made the Hulk interesting, that more than just this guy who gets angry and then turns into this big green monster, is the fact of what that does to his life, of how those things had repercussions. And now if there's this guy who maybe even has complete control over this form and is really confident and happy about all of this and is just really like insanely intelligent dude with few problems and is just handling the Hulk thing really, really well. You've completely taken everything that made it interesting and just thrown it out the window. And so, yeah, it's going to be sitting there in the shadow of the Bruce Banner storyline because it was more complex and interesting in comparison to somebody who has everything really easy.
Well, Rachel, you know why they're doing that, right? Because the white male, heterosexual, cisgendered person is the only person in fiction that you can make with problems that are shitty, that have shortcomings, that are capable of being shitty people or flawed. Anything else would be racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, or otherwise uh, bigoted. So you can't do that to Amadeus Cho because that would be racist?
He seems like the fucking Mary Poppins version of the Hulk, practically perfect in every way. I've got everything. He's like, here's the thing. They said something like along the lines of he's got a chip on his shoulder or something, and I'm like, how? Why? You're one of the smartest people on the fucking planet in the Marvel Universe, okay? You have a great job, things like that, and now you suddenly got superpowers, and it's not a downside? You're fucking walking on cloud 9. What's the story here?
Of course, and I want to say what Hannah was going to say. Unless, Hannah, you want to say it.
Well, I just wanted to point out that child genius Asian does happen to be an ethnic stereotype, and it is one of those ethnic stereotypes that puts a lot of pressure on people to conform. And there have been I've known people that have been sorely mistreated for not measuring up to that, even though the reason average is called average is because most people fit into average, whereas genius is actually quite rare. People simply expect Asians to automatically all be at the very top of the academic food chain, and anytime they're not, they really get crapped on for it. And so this is like, here they've taken a character that is a caricature or a stereotype, and where it may sound sort of social justice-y, even positive stereotypes can be damaging. And they've made that the representative that they're going to shove into this hand-me-down character. So it's not just insulting, it's insulting in a way that can be potentially damaging to young people who are going to read these comics, and they're asking people to feel represented by this, by promoting the idea and making that the portrayal. It's really disgusting, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Hannah, you do bring up a really good point in that aspect. One could reasonably argue that it actually will cause harm, in the sense that it encourages a form of perfection, right? And one of the staples of the superhero genre has always been that, all these characters, they develop these great powers, and we think, oh, it'd be so great to be a superhero, and every kid imagined that. But every single one of those heroes gets major problems that comes along with that, and ultimately those powers almost universally wreck their lives in some way, shape, or form. And that's always been the staple. It's like, turn around, let's look at Spider-Man for a second. So he can climb out on walls, he has super reflexes, he's very much so athletic, and he's a pretty smart kid. He came up with the webs and everything on its own, but it just totally wrecked his personal life. He's still balancing trying to be a normal person, and also just doing the right thing, not because he's part of some kind of super group or he belongs to some huge organization. It's one kid and his conscience. You've got Bruce Banner, who, as we all know him, mild-mannered Bruce Banner. Regular guy. The Hulk is not the guy that he is. Like, the Incredible Hulk is I don't know, was a manifestation of latent rage, and it was something that he constantly battled. His very own antagonist was himself. It wasn't some direct external force. It wasn't like, Spider-Man and his little rogues gallery of guys. It's Bruce Banner always had to deal with himself as the core issue and just getting control over that beast as much as he could. With this kid, the way that you guys are describing it, he has no challenge. There's nothing to fight. There's no room for character growth here. There's no pinnacle to go reach for over the course of this character's life. Everyone, as far as superheroes go, they're looking for something. It's a core part of being a superhero. Superman is looking for, just to jump to a different company, but stay with me. Superman is looking for how he fits into the world. Batman is looking how to reconcile that bad things happen in the world and what he can do with them with what he has. He's still learning how to be human, and he's doing it for the most part alone with his butler, or Wonder Woman even has to look at her responsibilities as being someone of great prominence within her culture, and of course balancing that against the rest of the world. And we look at all these things. Let's look at Captain America for a moment. You look at Captain America, and this is a guy, who is part of a super soldier program. He's not a superhero, but he's the tip top of what is supposed to be your average human being. He's as good as we could reasonably get in this form. And now he has to deal with all these other issues that come with that. Or Wolverine, right? He's got an almost unbreakable skeleton. He's got all this smell, and he's got all this. He doesn't even know who the hell he is, as his core story. I'm sure people are like, oh, no, I know that. What I'm saying is there was always this little thing, well, it wasn't little, but it was a big thing that made the character have to grow. They had to go on an adventure. They all had to discover themselves. They all had some sort of personal, internal, philosophical question that needed to be answered. And it was a relentless pursuit of that answer that leads to all of their adventures. And without that, well, a superhero is just another Mary Sue.
Okay. Well, I'm waiting. Somebody in the chat wants to clarify something about the totally awesome Hulk that we don't know. When they get to us, they'll probably tell me. I guess he had the character Cho was like socially inept, and he was looking to fix it, and it made him into the Hulk. But I don't know. We'll see. Well, I'll wait until they say something. In the meantime, do you guys want to go on to the next topic, Rachel, or was that all?
We have the final thingy.
The thingy that I was talking about?
Yeah. Well, the thingy he brought up, and so I'll read it. So anyway.
Okay.
Stealth games are queer positive. In an article for Boing Boing Offworld, a trans woman writes about her frustration with male bodies in the majority of video games, finding them too messy and aggressive. She proceeds to then make a weak argument for the male bodies in stealth games to be queer positive, with the general idea being that big muscly guys in games equals toxic masculinity, and the male bodies in stealth games are ideal because they are basically less threatening and more precise, which is somehow queer positive, because there's apparently no such thing as big muscly gay men. Ever.
Yeah.
There's no such thing, huh?
So, okay, one thing I want to say about this stealth game thing, because I know Oliver wants to say something about it too, but I got to get this out. So, there are a few things that are really fucking weird about this claim. One of them that I think stands out the most is it treats masculinity like a monolith, which is weird because oftentimes the arguments from this kind of mentality is that men are not defined by a singular definition of what masculinity is, which means that guys don't have to be alpha all the time, and guys don't have to, do all the guy stuff, and boys don't have to be boys, as it were. But strangely enough, they're also trying to make the argument that being I don't know, like people in a stealth game that rely on things like ingenuity and intuition and your ability to utilize your environment, and intellect is somehow a queer thing, and that it's something that men don't do. And why is it exclusively a queer thing? Why isn't that kind of interesting? Like, I know that you know, gay men, like straight men, come in all different shapes and sizes, and they have all different kinds of interests and beliefs and ideas, and some of them are religious, and some of them are secular, and some of them are, tall and short and buff and skinny and fat and hairy and bald and all that. So how do you make the claim that stealth games are, by some strange logical acrobatic maneuvers, that you make that into a thing that is definitively queer? Because does that not imply then that action games that star female characters, such as Bayonetta, for example, are also lesbian? Does that mean that stealth games that have female protagonists are also queer? Does that mean that stealth games like Tenchu, like I used to play Tenchu, and I never looked at Rikimaru and thought to myself, I wonder if he likes balls in his face? That concept never. I don't think that these things are related at all. But what I do think is happening, and this is the last thing I'll say before I pass this on, is that the people who are trying to make these arguments are trying to make the same kinds of arguments that they made when they tried to say that Samus, Tails, Link, and Zelda were all trans, and that you have to just deal with it. Because essentially, they want to tie identity politics to a certain either character or genre of gaming. And they want to make that claim in such a way that if... Shut up, my dog is talking to me. Come here, bitch. If you try to make that claim that, let's say someone says, look, Samus is trans, and you say, oh, well, I don't really like the Metroid games. Oh, you're transphobic. Stealth games are gay for some reason. I don't really play stealth games. I get into, like more straightforward ones. Well, then you're homophobic. Or there's something homophobic about your reluctance to play them. This is just another way of trying to inject identity politics into gaming in a, what I guess they think is clever method, but it really just comes across sounding bigoted and prejudiced, because they're projecting stereotypes, or even not even stereotypes, just strange and really obtuse definitions of what masculinity is onto a type of gaming in order to feel like they understand men, I guess? I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to pass the mic over to Hannah because she wants to say something really brief, and then Oliver can talk.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. You kind of touched on at the end. For all their claims about breaking down gender stereotypes and opposing the use of gender stereotypes, the social justice types, victim politics, identity politics, they seem to be the most prolific promoters of gender stereotyping out there. And it does rely on their own ideological definitions and descriptions of gender norms. They're projecting their own, this is what societal gender norms are, and we disagree with them. They're projecting that onto these characters as these are gender norms, therefore these characters must be how we define them outside of what we claim those gender norms are. And that's basically what they're doing. They're basically using these characters to enforce the very gender norms they claim to oppose.
I'm just going to say I lost a few brain cells reading over that earlier before we came on air. Because I looked at this, and yeah, I'm fairly confident it's one of the stupidest things I've ever read in my entire life. I'm looking at this, and this, again, just trying to insert these weird politics into things that are far more easily explained. Okay, so I spent a little bit of time playing the Gauntlet remake that came out that wasn't great, but it was worth the $14 I spent on it to smash some heads around, right? And I'm sitting there looking at the barbarian, and I'm thinking, everybody knows what the classic barbarian looks like in Gauntlet, right? Big swole dude, winging around an axe.
Yeah,
He's
it's
kicking
He-Man.
ass and taking. Yeah, right. He's He-Man. He's kicking ass and taking names. And then we look at something like everyone knows Metal Gear Solid 5. Phantom Pain just came out like within the past week, and like everybody's playing that. And we look at Snake or any of these characters, and they're smaller than the Barbarian. Well, there's a reason for that. See, the reason this whole article just set me off, and I was like, this is so dumb. It's like, well, wait a minute, what are you trying to say? What, because I fit that archetype, am I suddenly gay? Like, what does that mean? No, I'm a pretty masculine guy. I just happen to be a smaller, more agile type fella. Like, that's just what my build is. I'm sitting here looking at this stuff and doing the research. There's a simple reason why you see characters in stealth games tend to be smaller people. Oh, let me just take a wild guess. Maybe they have a smaller profile and it's a lot harder to see them. I don't know. That would just make a little bit of too much sense,
Well, I'm not talking over you, but there was one stealth game where you played like a goblin or something. I can't remember what it was called though. You were like a troll or some kind of green-skinned goblin troll orc thing, and you were killing guys, and he was kind of like a broad-shouldered, heavy, big-chested, barrel-chested guy, but also on the smaller side in terms of his height. He was like a little troll dude. But yeah, I mean, in general, they tend to be smaller because I think a big swole-ass barbarian hiding in the shadows is just kind of dumb looking.
Right. It's kind of something that's hard to miss. And that's kind of the whole point of the genre. The genre is subterfuge. It's espionage. It's not being seen and not being heard. And being a big, huge, swole dude is kind of counteractive to what you want to achieve there. I sit down, I look at my own body type, and I observe all the other body types of the types of characters who are associated with not just stealth games, but associated with being stealthy. So wait, let's jump back a couple of topics here. So wait, is Spider-Man suddenly gay now? Because he certainly fits that archetype.
Well, Batman does.
Right. Like, he's also generally depicted as slim, depending on where you're looking, but he's quick, he's athletic, he's all
stealthy.
These other things. I look at again, like I said, I look at myself, and I can tell you the science behind it. I mean, it's not that difficult. I mean, body type-wise, I fall into the category of being an ectomorph. Like, I don't have huge bulking muscles, but I'm very, very toned. I'm very defined. I have very sharp corners in my form, but I can also make my form even tighter than what it is. Bruce Lee was an ectomorph. He was very small. He was very quick, lithe. And that's just how it is. And there's biological reasons behind that as well. Like, I didn't realize that I was built to be an endurance cyclist, but as I sat down and I started doing all the studying and reading up, it turns out I am predispositioned because of my particular form and not having to pull a ton of extra weight around, and I keep that weight off. I'm well suited to handle certain types of tasks for an extended period of time. Oh, wait, just like how we see in stealth games where they're generally sprinting or doing types of free climbing where they would have to, or put forth a great deal of effort over a long period of time, whereas opposed to, a bigger, bulkier body type, where they can usually do great bursts of strength, but they cannot do that for an extended period. It has nothing to do with the insane ramblings of whatever is trying to be pitched today. It has to do with just basic biology here and why we assign people to certain types of tasks. I was looking at some fighting games to kind of support what I'm saying here, and you can see it repeated there as well. The smaller, quicker characters also tend to be the ones who don't hit as hard, but they hit faster and they hit more. And we assign different traits and we associate different things with those different types of body types. This is just common This is commonly known stuff. So I don't understand what makes these people come up with these wildly bizarre. I'm just going to flat out say they're bordering on insanity with the projection of what they want versus what is.
No. See, Ibuki is gay. Guy is gay. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are both gay. Ninjas are just gay. Strider's gay. I thought you knew.
Man, yeah, I guess so.
I mean,
Nobody
it's
sent me
fine.
the memo. Nobody sent me the paperwork on that, so I guess I'm behind.
Yeah, apparently
Well,
gay men only like other really small gay men, and there's no such thing as a bear. That's not a thing.
That's the thing I was going to point out. This is actually not just insulting to men in general. This is insulting specifically to gay men because it's stereotyping all gay men as being one body type and one intellect type, and one like they're all of a sudden they're trying to fit gay men into a cookie cutter mold, which is really actually just as damaging in its own way as the genius Asian stereotype, and very actually very cruel because quite a variety exists in the population, just like any other population, and it. Just thinking about the people among my group of friends who are gay, it's actually that particular stereotype is in the minority. Of course, I'm in my 40s, and most of the people I hang out with are close to my age. By the time you get my age, a lot of people are not petite anymore. But the reality is, this stereotyping, again, this kind of stereotyping is very common in gender politics, and particularly in the social justice identity politics crowd. And it's actually there's a whole subset of porn specifically dedicated to gay men who are not smaller, more I don't know, more svelte. They're bear porn, like big hairy guys. This is that it exists is actually, maybe it's not necessarily the best example to demonstrate the variety of people in the population, but it is a demonstration of the existence of that variety, and it's ridiculous to treat any kind of stereotyping like this as a positive for a community. Um, and of course, the other aspect of this is watch if you translate it into other areas of nerd culture, like Dungeons and Dragons. All of a sudden, everybody who is not the tank, every male character who is not the tank, must be gay.
The thieves are gay.
Yeah, but it really does stereotype gay men as not being the big strong guy, and it's really sad because the fact is the tank can be the gay guy, and the wizard or the thief or the bard or whoever can be straight. It's stereotyping like that is just lazy. It's lazy ass shitty behavior, and the people that claim to criticize it the most seem to be the ones that are most guilty of it.
So, guys, if you played Samurai Showdown and you like to play Hattori Hanzo or Galford, you were playing gay characters. Just so you know. All right, so Rachel, let's go into the last. Is there? Yeah, there's the one last one, right?
Yeah, there's no write-up for that one, but you
right.
know.
No, it's fine. I'll go into it briefly. Kevin, a guy named Kevin Walsh or Kev Walsh. This is an article or a blog post he wrote about wargaming. So this is for those of you who may or may not, but for those of you who may not know, wargaming is essentially miniatures gaming. If you are familiar with games, these are really old. Games Workshop is the most famous or well-known producer of them. They made games such as Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000 or 40K. as it's known in the circles of people who play it. So this guy he wrote a piece talking about how the spaces where wargamers take, normally gather to do their to miniatures gaming are basically fostering a space of sexism, racism, homophobia, and rape culture, because they use the word rape when they're, trash talking each other, much like in the video game circles where you might hear language like that. But on top of all the normal stuff that goes along with basically the new ways that people are finding to shame geek and nerd culture and various spaces where people just go to enjoy themselves and whatever the little hobbies are, specifically games like Warhammer and war miniature gaming also promotes right-wing nationalism and militarism. And you might... Like, they use, for example, there are tanks that you can play as in Warhammer 40k, and some people paint their tanks in a style like World War II, so there might be iron crosses, or they may even put, like, red flags with swastikas on them, or maybe a symbol that looks similar to one, because when you get one of these miniatures, you can paint it however you want. So this is a thing, apparently, that's problematic in this group. So this is a new thing, and I'm bringing this up because you guys should know this. If you're involved with Warhammer or any other miniatures, I used to play this one called Warzone when I was, like a few years ago. I loved it. It's based on the series of novels called The Mutant Chronicles. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It was kind of big in the UK, and it was one of those kind of like indie type of war games here. I also really like HeroClix a lot. But apparently I was contributed to a culture of nationalism and militarism by being involved in it. And I was also racist. So, yeah, Warhammer's racist, sexist, homophobic, and militarist, and right-wing.
It's that massive threat that Warhammer, or that wargamers are going to pull their tanks off the table and take over the world. It's just, they're so dangerous that they might like pull their tanks off the table and drive them around town shooting at people who don't conform, right? This is definitely a huge danger to the rest of the community that these. I'm sorry, I can't do that even with a straight face.
No, it's
you have to beware of the dangers of wargamers taking over the world. What would these people say if they came across the middle of a BattleTech game with miniature mechs on the it's some things are just too hard to take seriously, but the accusations themselves that engaging in fantasy role play, where there are character types that exist and where the portrayal of just like with tanks, the portrayal of aspects of history are going to be present in the game. To act like that is a promotion of making those things a part of a part of life now, today, in your community. I'm sorry, but that is like that's epic level stupidity.
Yeah.
It's bad enough to stereotype characters. It's bad enough to claim that people will adopt aspects of morality that are portrayed in games that can be very subtle and things like that. But it is so absolutely ridiculous to treat this as a real threat. Even if the accusations they were making against these people were true, it's just, I can't stop laughing. Sorry.
No, I've done my share of laughing when I read it. It's just painful and ridiculous. And I asked myself, there's clearly a massive disconnect between the people who write this stuff, who believe this stuff, that these kinds of pastimes and hobbies and interests can be this destructive. Well, I guess Hitler used to play Warhammer. Like that was what he did when he was in prison, when he and the young Nazi party were arrested, and he started typing Mein Kampf. In his spare time, he was also playing as the Eldar and preparing for, he got all kinds of ideas about what to do in order to initiate World War II. And that's probably why he lost. But the thing that I ask myself is that where do they get this idea, and what is it about miniatures gaming that real miniatures gamers, the kinds of people who don't think this way, what is it that attracts them? Like, why is Warhammer attractive? And like games like that. And I think, because as somebody who played a little bit of Warhammer and also used to play Warzone a lot and HeroClix as well, people just like, I think that it's fun to do. It's like, why do people play StarCraft? Like, why do people like to play turn-based strategy games? It's a nice challenge. Why do people like to play Battleship? Is Battleship promoting nationalism? Does Monopoly promote capitalism in like a really toxic way? Does Sorry promote individualism? I don't know. Does Sorry do that? I just can't. Like, I don't get it.
Violence against other pieces. Peg pieces.
Yeah, because in Sorry you have to like not, but then you have to apologize. So maybe it's.
So
Passive aggressive.
Passive aggressiveness, yeah. Sorry. Well, at chess. Chess was basically the first war game. It was, in some ways the simplest, but it's not really. The game itself is complex. The pieces are real simple. But does chess promote nationalism? Does it promote monarchy?
Yes.
Just following the monarchy. What about checkers?
We should play checkers instead because it's more communist. All the pieces are the same.
You could take this. You really can't take this to a more ridiculous level than they've already put it at. But you can demonstrate how ridiculous it is by using more and more simplified versions of games.
Yeah. I don't know.
My husband says tiddlywinks.
Tiddly. I don't think any game is safe. All of them promote something right-wing and conservative and bad.
Holy shit, what does Jenga promote?
Jenga is like a way to deconstruct. Well, maybe that's one of the good ones because you have to deconstruct a structure. I don't know.
And then you knock it down.
No, it's symbolic. It's symbolic for the general economic hierarchy.
The class struggle.
Does it was it nihilism or nihilism? How is that pronounced? Does it promote that?
Yeah, nihilism. Yeah.
Everything is crap, and the destruction, the degeneration is inevitable.
This is gonna fall eventually. It's just a matter of whose fault it is.
No, I'm saying it's a metaphor for social and economic hierarchy, and so you just kind of have to be able to find out what pieces you can take away and have the structure still standing.
Yeah. So guys, no matter what it is you like, rape culture, it promotes kisses and hugs.
And everything is rape when you're social
tic-tac-toe is rape culture.
Clue obviously promotes vigilantism.
Yes.
It promotes violence against women because you're killing Miss Scarlet in the billiard room with the candlestick.
If somebody was playing Jenga with two sets, it would be like the Twin Towers. That's what that's about. That's what we need to do. Somebody should make a Jenga where the pieces look like a building.
Oh God, no.
Go forth and design it. Assemble the old fags.
No.
Oh God.
No.
Somebody is going to do that now.
Yeah.
Old fags assemble. Or actually, you don't even have to do that. Just Photoshop the Jenga box.
Oh.
What does Chutes and Ladders promote?
It's supposed to be. It doesn't have morality in it. Like essentially, when you do something bad, you go down the chute, and when you do something good, you climb the ladder.
Oh, you're just fucking rolling the goddamn dice, if I recall.
It promotes the patriarchy because men make the rules.
And then there's Mousetrap. Mousetrap obviously promotes animal cruelty.
Yes. See, all of this can everything.
What about Crossfire?
And that's violence. That's toxic masculinity, isn't it?
Okay.
Shooting stuff. Yeah,
Don't get
all
caught
of
up in it.
everything
and
you like.
Anthony pointed out that there are people among the social justice types that say that chess promotes sexism against women and misogyny. Well, and of course the I think if I remember right from reading some of the claims about that, they're based on a belief that women don't logic as well as men do, and therefore chess is sexist because it requires, a greater ability to logic, which I suppose that might actually, it's not a sexist thing if that's the case. It might actually be them sort of admitting without wanting to admit it that there are differences between the brains of the two sexes, and they've decided that chess is sexist because it brings out some of those differences.
And it's racist because there's black and white pieces. And the white goes first, right? Fucking typical. So, yeah. So, guys, everything you like, it's bad. So keep doing it. And I guess that's the end of the show. It was really not... Unless somebody has any final thoughts on all the shit that we just said.
I suppose Hungry Hippos is Hitler.
Hungry Hippos is body shaming.
Promotes the animal stereotypes.
It also really upsets other kin who identify as hippos of various pastel colors.
Who like to gobble balls. Don't shame them for their life choices.
I can't remember who it was, but I just wanted to say kudos to the person in chat who posted LGBTQbert.
There you go.
By the way, we've just learned, I don't know if you guys know this, but we've just learned today that a hippo couldn't possibly want to gobble balls because hippos aren't stealthy. And only things that are stealthy want balls in their mouth. So that's basically what I'm going to leave you guys with. If you
hippos are stealthy.
They
they hide in the water, and like only their eyes stick up, and when they like their eyes and their snout stick up, and that's the only thing that you can see.
They're also scary motherfuckers too. They will kill you. They're probably the most dangerous, or one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. They're responsible for more deaths, I think, a year than lions and like all the others combined.
The hippo stereotypes, they're a lot more butch than everybody thinks.
Yeah. They'll steal you for like no reason.
All right, I'm calling the show. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. And if you like what you see here, please donate to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. I think it sounds right.
The question mark at the end of it.
Yeah, put the question mark at the end. All right. Good night.